Hello, hello. Hopefully you're doing fine. Hopefully you miss class as much as I do. And the discussions that we had, now we're stuck with this online learning. So today we're going to look at a famous experiment about learning. So we've looked at classical conditioning, Pavlov. We've looked at operant conditioning with B.F. Skinner. And now we're going to look at observational learning. So if you watch the Skinner video closely, he basically says we're completely governed by how we're reinforced. And we only learn because of what's reinforced and what's punished. Well, Albert Bandura was a social psychologist, and he showed strongly that people also learn by observation, meaning we watch what other people do, and that influences how we behave. And Edward Tolman did some work with cognitive maps and rats and showed that there's something called latent learning, where we learn things even when we don't realize we're learning them. In other words, they're not rewarded. So, for example, let's say there's a restaurant that you drive by every day on the way to school when we used to go to school, and you've never been there. Then one day maybe you're selling something off of Craigslist, and they say, can you meet me at such and such a restaurant? And you're like, oh yeah, I know where that is. I drive by that place every day. Well, you've learned where that location is, even though it's never been reinforced before. So we have all kinds of knowledge. So Tolman called it latent learning, learning that's in your brain but not utilized until it's needed. And so these two things, latent learning, observational learning, were kind of in response to behaviorists like Skinner and Watson, who said you only learn when it's been reinforced. So we're going to watch this short little video clip on Albert Bandura's most famous study using a Bobo doll and little kids. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, is this ethical? You watch. The music's great.
Segment you're about to see is taken from an early experiment on
Sorry, notice he's from Stanford University. Who else was from Stanford University, who did a study that may not have been ethical? Philip Zimbardo, Stanford prison experiment.
learning of aggressive styles of behavior through modeling. Children watched a filmed adult perform novel aggressive acts toward a inflated doll, and the physical aggression was accompanied by novel hostile remarks. We later measured how much of this modeled aggression the children had learned just by watching. Now, the measurement of learning of aggression uses simulated targets rather than live ones. For example, to test how well bombardiers have learned bombing strategies, You would use simulated targets rather than require them to bomb San Francisco or New York. The model pummeled the doll with the mallet, flung it in the air, kicked it repeatedly, threw it down and beat it. It was once widely believed that seeing others vent aggression would drain the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to aggressive modeling is hardly cathartic.
He's just wailing on that thing with a hammer.
Exposure to aggressive modeling increased attraction to guns, even though it was never modeled. Guns had less appeal to children who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling. The children also picked up the novel hostile language.
Hammer in one hand, pistol in the other.
The room contained varied play materials, and children could choose to play aggressively or non-aggressively.
Man, she's having a ball.
The children devised new ways of hitting the doll. Now, the object of interest was the novel aggressive acts, not punching the doll. The children in the control group who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling never exhibited the novel forms of aggression. Here's a creative embellishment. A doll becomes a weapon of assault.
Look at that. Wow. Isn't that disturbing? You got little kids who watch an adult verbally and physically abuse a doll, and then they're put in a playroom, and lo and behold, they verbally and physically abuse the doll. And they do it in novel ways. So he uses the term novel quite a bit. It just means new, something they hadn't seen. So hopefully you got some idea about observational learning. And so I posted 2 articles on Moodle, one on this study and the other one on Edward Tolman's cognitive maps. So make sure you read both of those as well.